Chapter 5. The Komi family meeting. The air in the Tadano household was thick with nervous tension. The following evening, Tadano fidgeted on the couch, his hands clenching and unclenching as he glanced at the clock for the 100th time. His mother bustled around the kitchen, humming a cheerful tune, as if this were just another casual dinner party. Meanwhile, Tadano was ready to dig a hole in the backyard and crawl into it. "Mom, do we really have to do this?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight whine. "I mean, what if they think I've completely lost it? Or worse, what if they think I'm some kind of weirdo for wishing?" Tadano. His mother's voice cut through his rambling like a knife. She stepped into the living room, hands on her hips, and gave him a look that could silence a hurricane. "It's not weird to want to understand your friend better. What's weird is not talking about what's happening to you when your face looks like it could belong on Kami-san's family portrait." Tadano groaned, sinking deeper into the couch. He tugged the hood of his sweatshirt over his head, trying to hide. He knew she was right, but that didn't make it any less mortifying. His reflection in the mirror, earlier that day, had been enough to make him want to scream. His face, his stupid, traitorous face, was now practically indistinguishable from Komi's, down to the delicate slope of his nose and the way his cheekbones caught the light. His voice, too, had pitched up another notch, and if he wasn't careful, it sounded almost melodic. Worse, his body had betrayed him further. His chest, now undeniably feminine, swelled beneath the thick fabric of his hoodie. And his hips, he didn't even want to think about those. The jeans he'd managed to squeeze into earlier had hugged them so tightly that he'd immediately turned around and swapped them for sweatpants. The doorbell rang, and Tadano's heart leapt into his throat. "They're here," his mother sang out, practically skipping to the door. Tadano, on the other hand, felt like his entire soul had just been punched in the gut. "Why me?" he thought miserably. "You know?" His mother opened the door with a warm smile, ushering the Komi family inside. Tadano peeked out from under his hood, his heart pounding as he watched them step into the living room. Komi's father, Masayoshi, was his usual stoic self, his towering frame and piercing gaze giving off an aura of quiet intimidation. Her mother, Shouko, was the complete opposite, beaming brightly as she took in the Tadano household. Shouko, Komi's younger brother, stood silently behind them with his usual disinterested expression. And then, of course, there was Komi herself. Tadano's breath caught as his eyes landed on her. She looked as graceful and elegant as ever, her long black hair shimmering under the light. But what really caught his attention was the way her eyes widened ever so slightly as she looked at him. She tilted her head, her lips parting in what might have been surprise or confusion. "Tadano-kun," Shouko said, her voice lilting with curiosity. "Oh my, you look." She trailed off, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. Then her face lit up with realization. "My goodness, you look just like Shouko." "Mom," Tadano hissed, pulling the hood tighter over his head as a flush crept up his neck. "Don't just say that out loud." "It's true though," Shouko said, her tone more amused than anything else. She turned to Komi, her smile widening. "Doesn't he look just like you, Shouko-chan?" Komi's cheeks turned pink as she glanced between Tadano and her mother. She gave a small nod, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her skirt. "Why don't we all sit down?" Tadano's mother said, steering the Komis toward the dining table. "Dinner's almost ready, and we have a lot to talk about." Tadano shuffled to the table reluctantly, keeping his head down as the Komis took their seat. He could feel their eyes on him, especially Komi. His mind raced, trying to think of a way to explain himself, without sounding completely insane. So, Tadano-kun, Shouko began, her tone light but curious. Your mother mentioned there's been an unusual situation? Tadano winced. Ooh, yeah, you could say that. Why don't you start from the beginning? His mother prompted, giving him an encouraging smile. Taking a deep breath, Tadano launched into the story of the school trip and the shooting star. He explained how he had wished to better understand Komi, and how, shortly after, strange changes had started happening to his body. As he spoke, his voice trembled slightly, and he found himself avoiding Komi's gaze. By the time he finished, the table was silent. Well, Shouko said after a moment, breaking the silence with a nervous laugh. That's certainly unexpected. Masayoshi, who had been silent until now, let out a low, thoughtful hum. None? Tadano wasn't sure what that meant, but it didn't sound judgmental, so he took it as a good sign. Shouko leaned forward, resting her chin in her hand as she studied Tadano. You know, Tadano-kun, I think your wish might have worked a little too well. You do understand Shouko better now, don't you? After all, you're practically her twin. Tadano groaned, burying his face in his hand. This isn't funny, he muttered. I didn't ask for this. I think it's kind of funny, Shousuke muttered under his breath, earning a sharp look from Komi. Komi, for her part, remained quiet, her gaze darting between Tadano and her family. Then, slowly, she reached out and placed a hand on his arm. Tadano froze, his heart skipping a beat, as he looked up to meet her eyes. She gave him a small, reassuring smile. Her grip, gentle, but steady. Shouko-chan's. Right, Shouko said, her voice softening. You're not alone in this, Tadano-kun. We'll figure it out together. Tadano felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely lost. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation and laughter. Shouko offered to help Tadano adjust to his new appearance, even suggesting skincare tips and hairstyling tricks. Masayoshi remained mostly silent, but gave Tadano a firm nod of approval before they left. And Komi stayed by his side, her quiet presence more comforting than words. As the Komis left, Komi paused in the doorway, turning back to look at Tadano. She hesitated for a moment, then gave him a small wave. Tadano waved back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Maybe, just maybe, things would be okay.